What's up? Welcome to my review of the third and final book in the Poppy War trilogy, The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. Alright, so if you've been on this channel for a while, you know that the Poppy War and the Dragon Republic are two of my favorite fantasy novels in the world. The series itself is one of my absolute favorites, and I was super lucky to get approved by Harper Voyager to get an advanced reader's copy of the third and final, The Burning God, and I finished it this morning, so I figured why not talk about it while it's still fresh in my mind. I will start out with non-spoilers. Even though it is the third, I'll do my best to not spoil anything previous. And then I will move into brief spoilers at the end if you're curious or want to talk about it. That said, The Poppy War is a story that starts out with our main character, Rin, who lives, she's an orphan and she lives with a family that trades in opium. So her life basically has nowhere to go. She's either going to get sold off to be married so that the family that she lives with gets money for her, or she's going to be stuck in this opium trade. So her life is not that good, and the only way that she's going to get out of it from her perspective is to train really hard to get into a very hard to get into school where she learns to be an assassin, and you get to choose your path. There are different paths. So are you going to be a scholar? Are you going to be a soldier? That kind of thing. So that's all the first book is, the training, and then moving into a war. The Poppy War obviously is a war about opium and owning land in the country that they're in, and it kind of goes from there. So Rin is a character that is largely flawed, and I think that's one of the strongest parts of this whole entire trilogy, is that I've never read a character that so acted their age and had to deal with the consequences of the choices made, because she's only like 22. Even through to the end of this trilogy, she doesn't exit her early 20s. So you've got a young girl who's had a really hard life and lived very ridiculous experiences up until she gets into this school, and even still life gets even harder. We are introduced to gods that are in a pantheon, so you're talking different kinds of religions we're tackling, but these gods, they can be accessed. It all comes back to opium. And you can call down a god if you have made that connection with them. So obviously, without getting too spoilery, Rin does become a shaman and gains power. I won't get much into what specifically happens with that, but once you've accessed a god, you are basically living both your life and the life of the god wanting to come in through your existence. So eventually every human will go crazy. It's inevitable because the god will want more and more and more from you. So you've got Rin making all these decisions that she's too young and irresponsible to make, and she's also tackling her sanity and trying to keep herself centered and grounded while also having these powers. And meanwhile, you're fighting this entire war. So one thing I'll say is that if you do not like books, high fantasy books that delve really deeply into the specificities and the depth that planning and executing strategical war maneuvers, if that's not something that intrigues you, these books definitely won't be for you, because a large majority of each of them does have to do with those things. And sometimes, if you're not in the right headspace, which I'll confess I haven't been, can bog down the story and change the pacing a little bit for you. So because we're talking about The Burning God specifically, let's get into that specifically. I was approved for this in early September, and I only just finished it today, which is October 4th. I would say mid-September, actually. Normally a book like this, one of my highly anticipated books, I would rip through in less than a week, but it did not happen that way for me. As of yesterday morning, Saturday morning, I was 59% through the book. It took me that long to get to 59%, but then in the last 24-ish hours, I finished the remaining 41%. So I can't say objectively whether it was my mental state, because I have not been in a reading mood whatsoever. If you've been here, you know that a lot of things have changed in the dynamics of how my days go since the pandemic, and I haven't had a lot of reading time. So was that because my weeks are shorter now in terms of free time, or was it because the opening part is a lot of that war buildup that I mentioned earlier? I don't know. I cannot say. That said, the last 40% of the book was stunning, and I absolutely loved it. I think that R.F. Kuang is both good at writing. She clearly did a lot of research in terms of strategies and war strategies and violence and how things would pan out based on different decisions and the consequences that come of those decisions. Fantastic. Her super strength is writing individual characters, in my opinion. As I've said, Rin is super flawed, so you love her and you also can't stand her because sometimes you're like, how can you make these decisions? How can you be this dumb? Her character arc is so incredible. It's one of my favorite that I've seen in any fantasy series ever. It is very complex and a lot of things happen and there's a lot of self-actualization and growth, and then even taking steps backwards in growth. And there's just, she's so complicated and real and raw. The violence, trigger warning for everybody that has trouble with very grotesque violence, the whole series has a lot of it. There's no holds barred when it comes to death and murder and really awful scenes, so be aware of that. But I really respect in a writer when they can go full bore and not revoke those decisions, as we often see in fantasy. So score for that. And even minimal characters. You're introduced to a couple characters in The Burning God that you don't know before this, and I quickly fell in love with them, so that it was very impactful. The reasoning for them being introduced was very, very impactful. That's how quickly she can make you care about her characters. Absolutely stunning. So yeah, I think that's as much as I can say about the story without getting any spoilery at all. I would give it a 4.5 star rating at this point, I would say. I was hoping it'd be a 5-star, and again, I can't say whether it's me or whether it was the pacing of the book or I wasn't just in the mood for a war fantasy, but I can't give it a full 5 stars in good faith, knowing that it took me almost a month to read, which is not my typical reading pace. But also I didn't really read much at all in September, so I don't know. But I'm giving it 4.5 stars because it was really great and the ending was great and the whole wrap up of the trilogy, I couldn't have asked for anything more, but the beginning did drag a little bit for me. So now we're gonna head into a brief bit of spoilers. I'm not even gonna spoil it. I'm just gonna say that that ending wrecked my life. I cried on and off for 10 minutes after finishing the book. I will need time between now and the next fantasy to recover from it, and R.F. Kuang can really write, and I can't wait to see what she comes up with next. So thank you again to Harper Voyager and Netgalley for offering me this opportunity to read an early copy of one of my most anticipated reads of the year. If you've been here, you know how much this series means to me, and if you've read these books, you're gonna like the last one. That's all I have to say. Let me know down below if you do read this and what you think of it. If you are actively reading the series and you're looking forward to it, make some guesses for me. See if you know where the story is headed. I can't imagine you do, but you never know. That is it for me. I'm so excited to have it done. I will be ordering my physical copy soon to have the 3 on my shelf because I absolutely love them and I will reread them again eventually. I hope you're all well. Thank you for being here. As always, you can find all of my social media links down below on Goodreads, Instagram, and Twitter. I hope that your summer has ended nicely and that fall is treating you well and the weather is cooling down a little bit if you're in like my hemisphere, or that you're doing okay despite the circumstances of the world right now. I miss you all. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one, guys.